Hey everybody, Minus here from Pantheon Plus, and with me tonight is, as always, unless he's not, Hayah. What's up?
Hi.
Hayah, how was
So,
the commercial?
I loved it.
So, for anyone that didn't see interviews with Minus this week, we had finally a Hayah themed commercial, and I took a lot of pride in
Long
that one.
overdue.
Yeah, long overdue. Took a lot of pride in that one. It was pretty funny if you haven't seen it. We're actually gonna once interviews with Minus is done, which is this is the last week coming up. We're actually going to put a clip together of all the commercials and put it out.
Oh,
So
the commercial reel?
yeah,
That'll
we're
be
gonna just
fun.
do a straight commercial reel. That's really the only reason people watch it anyway. But all right, I'm getting off topic right away as we start. So tonight we're actually going to be talking about guilds. Now, there's not a lot of information on how guilds are going to run in Pantheon. So we're just going to kind of talk about the overall over. What did I just say?
Overall guilds?
Overarching.
Okay.
That was good. You almost covered for me. The overarching, just importance of guilds. Now, there's a couple games we've played, which we're going to talk about sort of how those guild systems worked. There's a couple games we haven't played that had some cool guild systems that I'm going to kind of just read through some things that, I was able to collect. Some of it may be off. Call me out if it isn't in the comments. And then we're going to kind of go into a deeper dive on not just how important they are, but what we would like to see in Pantheon. Some outside the box ideas. Because I think that right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that me and Hayah both think that guilds are maybe the most important thing about an MMO, and it's really what makes an MMO good. So let's go ahead and let's start by talking about why we think guilds are so important. Do you want to go first?
I very it's easy to sum it up. The guild is the heart and soul. It's your crew, it's your family. You roll with them and you do whatever else is part of the game. That's what a guild is for. It's your brothers in arms.
Yeah, and it's a reason to log on when
Absolutely.
there's not always a lot of content to do. If there's things that have gotten stale in the game, it's not as bad with your crew, as you put it.
Hmm.
And I think this is a good segue for us to sort of talk about our WoW guild for a few seconds here and talk about, then we can kind of jump into the WoW's guild structure, which honestly I don't think was very good. I don't know how you feel about it, but
No, it was terrible.
yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So we started our own guild in Legion, and then we took that into BFA, and there were times, even though Legion was seen as a pretty good expansion, where there were lull periods and there was a lot of complaining going on and like a lot of negativity about the game and oh you're gonna lose subs, and then obviously when BFA hit that went nuts, right? So that was the biggest drop off of players and complaining. Um,
Hmm.
but personally for me, I enjoyed every second up until I left for the most part, because of my guild. And
Because we had a team. Yeah.
yeah, and we had a very solid small guild, right? Which we'll talk about in a few minutes. How that seems to be classified on Wiki, which is kind of funny. I think you'll enjoy that. But we had a very small guild. We had a raid group of anywhere from, on average, 20 to 30 different scenarios. Probably maybe
It depends on how far into an expansion or into a patch cycle we were that
yeah.
our raid size would fluctuate.
Yeah. So why am I saying all this? Well, the thing that got me to play more is to watch progression of people in guilds, build relationships, go do stupid things with guild members. We've talked a few times on these about just drunken raid nights or
Mhm.
drunken dungeon runs, and knowing that you'd have to chat with people you knew and chat with group with people you knew. You weren't going to have raging all the time. You still have some raging.
A little bit of raging.
A little bit of raging, but I always said that the reason I played WoW wasn't for WoW all the time. It was because it had the most people, and
Hmm.
it was a little bit easier. I think any guild leader out there will be able to say it's never easy running a guild, but it's a little easier because there were more population to put into your guild, more ability to recruit. So when you had your group of people and you actually had to shut off recruiting depending on the size you wanted to be, it felt good, right?
Hmm.
It felt really good to log on and do stupid stuff, and you made a point to get on at certain times. And I always wondered, and I talked to you earlier today, and I said that there was a lot of people who are anti-guild, and you kind of said there's
Yeah.
anti-guild
Wait.
people,
Really? What?
and I think that maybe that's not the case outside of WoW, but WoW was very anti-guild. There's a lot of people that
It
just wanted
was.
to do pickup groups,
Hmm.
that wanted to do LFR, that felt like being in a guild was being controlled. So they were, oh, I don't want to be in a guild. Guilds are all drama, and that was very common on the forums for people to say that. Again, maybe that's just WoW. Right.
I mean, yes, you're going to see more drama in a guild, but that's not the only part of being in a guild. It's just that exposure to more people gives exposure to more shitty people.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. But what's interesting is, when you learn people, and even people who may seem shitty at first, you kind of learn about them a little bit. They
Yeah.
ease up a little bit, and then you have great relationships. Me and you met in Blade and Soul. You had
Mm-hmm.
a guild called Brave Companions,
Mm-hmm.
and I jumped into the game. And I think we could probably both say Blade and Soul wasn't the best MMO we ever played, right?
Far from the best. Yeah.
But we played it for a while because our guild was actually pretty. We were
We had a
semi-important.
really good thing going. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those that I don't think we've talked about this a lot, but in Blade and Soul, it was like red versus blue. Essentially the best way to put
Essentially,
it.
it was a faction-based thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were on a decently popular server that had a lot of known people, and we were two known people on that server. And they announced that they were going to be closing servers and shifting people. So
Yeah, merging them.
so even though we were blue at the time and we hated red, we knew a lot of people from red. So we came up with this big scheme, this big political scheme
Yes.
that Hayah even said to me, "Are we really sure we want to do this?" And of course,
Yep.
pure minus, like, yes, of course we can do it.
Yeah.
So we transferred and took a huge core of the blue group over into the red group, and we merged into this mega political system of guilds to try to say, okay, when the server is closed, let's all go together and be a unified group. It worked
Yeah.
for a little bit, and then
Do you remember, sidestep here a little bit, but do you remember the back room meetings we would have about this stuff in the House of Pleasures in Zyway? Do you remember that? Like, that was such a cool thing to be a part of, regardless of it being, like, really dumb on the whole. But
And
it was a cool.
what he's talking about is there was a place called the House of Pleasures. Yes.
Yeah, it was
That's
a
what it was.
brothel in the video game.
Yeah.
So
And
we had all our
always
backroom
meet.
meetings there.
We would always meet with guild leaders in there and talk. And there are times we spent like 2 hours in there talking
Yep.
strategy. But, again, that's another piece of guild. We got a little sidetracked. But if I wasn't in that guild with Hayah, I don't think I would have played Blade and Soul very long. We had a reason outside of the game to play, right? And we gained some reputation, both as individuals and as a guild. And in a game like Pantheon, where they talk about community and they talk about reputation, the guild that you're in and the way that guilds perform are going to be a huge part of reputation on the server. That tag under your name is going to mean a lot more in Pantheon than probably any other game in a long time. So that's kind of just a little bit of what I think of guilds. I think that there's a lot of people who miss out by not joining a guild. I think that if they were to join a good guild and get a better experience, that they're not all good. There's not all good. Leadership is not an easy thing.
Not at all.
No, and that's what's going to make a guild good, right? Does the leader is the guild run for the sake of the guild or for the sake of the leader?
Mm-hmm.
But that's honestly, like I said, we played through the first raid tier of BFA, and we mainly left because of Pantheon. I mean, it was a little stressful, just the negativity in the game, but we enjoyed every second of the content as a guild. Again, if I was outside of a guild, I probably wouldn't have even made it to the first raid tier.
No, I don't think I would have either.
So, before we jump into some guild features, here's my Hayah, you gave out like a be excellent to each other in our last video, right? Find a guild. Dedicate yourself to a guild. It may not be the first one, but give them a try. If you're playing Pantheon, find a guild, find a home, and work to make that home good, because that's going to increase your odds of enjoying and staying with Pantheon, hands down.
And step out of your comfort zone for the greater good of a unit.
Yeah.
It's the best thing you can do in an MMO.
And there's probably some people who are like, no, duh, I get it. I understand that this is not rocket science that we're speaking here. But there are a lot of people out there that tend to shy away from that guild culture. And I'm telling you, this is the game. Don't do that to yourself. Find one. It might not be the first one, but find one that you like.
Yeah, worth it.
So as a former, we've both been guild leaders, raid leaders. So I think one of the things we really wanted to talk about with guilds is, how do you do guilds right? How does Pantheon help us as raid leaders and people out there that have been raid leaders or officers or guild leaders, I'm sorry. It's not easy to run the guild by itself, but the tools in the game can play to keeping people, right? So a big portion that we're going to talk about on the rest of this video is what would we like to see? Now, this is a hypothetical video. Some people don't like that. Some people don't like the fact that we're just kind of shooting the shit right now and saying this is what I'd like to see, because none of this may happen, right?
Right, and it's all pure speculation.
Pure speculation. There's really not a lot that you can look at right now from VR about guilds. So maybe this is a shout out and a cry, like, please, if you've ever watched one of our videos, and mad props to Joppa. Did you see Joppa commented on one of our videos and said, keep up the great work, guys? And he put, I'm subbed. And I was like, I just sat there.
Hashtag I'm subbed.
Yeah. And then, like, he tweeted out some of our videos, then Brad tweeted out. So I'm like, oh shit, now people are going to see us and see how unprofessional we are. And this is all going to go downhill now, because we just had a small group. They forgave us for all our issues, and now we're in trouble. But okay, so let's start with WoW. We already talked about WoW. Let's talk about, you know, what was foreseeably the largest subbed game in the history of MMOs. Let's talk about their guild system. Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
I'll start. It lacked some very crucial guild leader or guild officer core management tools for tracking certain things, attendance, this, that, the other. It could have been a little bit more hands-on. It was very much like, here's this window and it shows some names, and that's just about it. Yeah. And then they changed to communities, and I didn't spend enough time in BFA with the communities window to make a comment on it, really.
The problem with communities is it was the saying of a day late, a buck short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I will give you that.
Little Blink reference. Let me get this out real quick.
Come on.
Mark freaking Hoppus. So it's my favorite Funko Pop. So the problem was that BFA was really negative at that point. So the overall trade chat, which was never great, but the overall fan base of WoW was really angry, and communities were launched, and they broke guild controls. So guilds were a disaster. You couldn't even read guild chat. So it was just negative from the get-go. Decent idea, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a couple other games. But yeah, so I agree. You know, there were very small reasons to stay in a guild. Other than,
so you got, what, 10 minutes off your Hearthstone cooldown?
Yeah, and you had, you know, some banners that I had never used.
I never used them either.
You had a couple mounts you could buy, but you didn't have to stay. Like, once you had the mount, you could
That's not true. Banners were great for when I put a flask down to point our raid team to where the flask or the cauldron was. That's what it was. That's what banners were for us.
Yeah, Hayah was the flask guy, so he would put our guild flag down and be like, that's where the cauldron is. Because, you know, we put the cauldron down, there's a 100 pen on it. Where's the cauldron? I can't find it. You know, and their tabard and cloak system wasn't bad.
No.
I would have liked to seen it on more pieces, but there was some neat flare options, and you could get some heirloom items. So if you were leveling alts, there were heirloom items you can only get from being in a guild at a certain level. But again, when you left the guild, those mounts, everything was...
that was gone.
No, you kept
for
it.
you.
Yeah.
Really?
So, yeah. So you could join a guild, get the mount, and then leave, and you had it. There was no reason to stay. And a lot of times you could jump into a guild that was already leveled all the way up, and you just had to get a little bit of reputation in the guild to get some of them, and then you get them and you're out.
That's right. They had a rep with the guild. That's true. Yep. Yeah.
So it was sloppy, because you could jump in and get the advantages of being in a guild pretty quickly. Now, let's not take away the fact that there was a calendar. It wasn't phenomenal, but there was a calendar. And obviously being in a guild allows you to, you can have scheduled events. So... yeah. You know, overall, the theme of being in a guild there was pretty good. The banking system, you know, you had your guild bank. Guild bank wasn't horrible. I mean, it's simple. It's a simple concept, but they did it decently well. And you know, one of the things that nobody remembered ever that was in there that was actually really cool was going into the window and sorting by professions.
Yeah, and you could reach out to guys who you needed, you know, if you needed a gem, if you needed an enchant, you knew who was doing it.
And not only that,
underrated feature, yes.
Yeah, and nobody used it, which is crazy to me. Like, I can't tell you how many. Yeah. Well, we were officers, but like, people didn't realize that was even there for sometimes, because the guild system was so rough. But it was cool, because let's say I wanted to go farm mats for something. I could just find someone who was mastered, and I could actually go into their whole crafting list, and I could see the materials. So I didn't have to have anybody link anything to me. That was really cool. I really liked the crafting side as someone who doesn't craft and always needed somebody else to help. That was probably one of the biggest positives I'd say about it.
Yep.
Okay, so let's move on a little bit here. The other two games that I've played a bit, I'm not going to get into detail hugely on their functionality. We're going to do that on a couple games we actually haven't played. But so you had Final Fantasy 14, and Hayah, I don't think you played it, right?
I never touched it. No.
Okay, so Final Fantasy 14 introduced two types of permanent grouping that you would call guilding. First of all, the standard guild was called a free company. So you go get your guild set up, you had a free company, that was your guild. It's just a different name for guild.
Okay.
But the other thing they had were called link shells. And if I'm not mistaken, a Final Fantasy 11 fan can go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong here, but in Final Fantasy 11, their guilds were called link shells. But in this game, they called them free companies, but you still had link shells. And what link shells were basically moderated chat rooms with leader privileges. And it was like you could jump in and start talking with that group of people to find groups, but you didn't have to be in the same guild. So it was very similar to the communities feature that WoW tried to implement, but Final Fantasy XIV had that from the get-go. So it was pretty interesting. I was in a very small free company that didn't do much in that game, so a lot of my time was actually spent with the link shells, doing groups in like the single boss fight, like Infinite summons and stuff like that, the hard mode summons. That was a lot of time it was done with the link shells, which is pretty interesting. And then a step further, now I didn't play ESO, but in ESO and Guild Wars 2, you could join multiple guilds.
Yes.
I hate that.
Really?
Yeah, I really do. The link shells were on the verge of me disliking them. But I absolutely hate being able to join multiple guilds, because the thing about a guild is community, and being in a guild to me is like, this is what I chose and this is important to me.
Yeah, these are my people, not these people plus those people plus those people.
Yeah,
plus those people.
And when you're in a guild,
I can understand that.
Yeah, even people you don't like, you sort of find a way to find a
relate.
common ground with.
Yeah,
and there's people who I have not liked in our own guilds, and I eventually liked. You're not going to do that if you're in multiple guilds. You're not going to invest that, because you just say, well, this guild.
I just want to hang out with him. I'll go to the other guild and
I'll just talk to the other guild. I like this guild for raiding, but I don't want to waste my time learning anybody, so I'm going to spend my social time in this guild, and I'm going to. So that was always a little. I'm not a fan of that. I don't know. Do you feel the same? I mean, do you not?
No, I mean, I'm maybe not as strongly opinionated on it, but yeah, I get it. It takes away some of the personal attachment to your guild when you can join 5 of them, or however many of them. I definitely get that.
Yeah, and when we get towards the end of the video and we start talking about like what we want, I think it'll paint a better picture of staying in a guild is what I really want. So having multiple is really against that theology. I like that word, and I didn't even slur it. Okay, so we're gonna talk about 2 games. Now I'm playing EQ2 right now, and I am an officer in a guild, but I'll be honest, I haven't looked at the guild system very much, and at the same time,
it confuses me.
Well, I haven't played it enough either to really be able to say I understand it. So what I did is I just pulled up a couple details about the EQ2 guilds, and I'm just going to read through them, and then we can kind of discuss what do we like, what don't you like about it. So so there's some standard housing that was tied to your guild's level. Okay. So your own personal housing that you could purchase if you were in a certain guild, you'd have more options. You had the freedom to purchase certain mounts or other cool items that were paid with what's called status points. So
status with the guild?
I'm guessing. I don't know.
Okay.
And again, in the comments, let us know if you were part of that system. So that's kind of interesting, and I actually want to get into something like that later. You had various prefix titles that were guild related.
I like that. I like prefixes and titles and
fluff. You had the ability to display a cloak if you had a cloak design, so similar to WoW. You had a special shared bank, so guild bank. And then you also, and we've seen this, we spent some time in, there was ability to buy a guild hall. And what was cool about that guild hall is that you could have amenities in there, like fast travel, hirelings to gather resources, special buff items, and there were a lot of perks. So the guild hall wasn't just some place to go, you could build into it
Yeah, add to it. Individual people with different professions can add to those, I think.
Yeah, I can't, I'm not going to try to pretend I know exactly what that looks like, but it's a pretty interesting concept that the guild hall had this very strong functionality to it. And I don't want to get too off track, but I'm not super into housing. I think it takes away, a lot of games are instance housing. There are some that aren't. Like I played Arcage, it's not. But like EverQuest is instance. You go into your house, you go into your.
EverQuest 1 used to have instance neighborhoods. So you'd have 12, or I don't remember how many, but you'd have some players living in a neighborhood, and that neighborhood was instance. So your neighbors could see you. I really liked that.
Do you feel it took away from city hubs? Like, did people
no,
hang out in their houses a lot?
In my time when I used to actively play EverQuest on a consistent basis, it definitely didn't.
Okay.
It was more of a bling thing, and it was never really relevant. But like I said, the idea of a neighborhood that is instanced rather than a home that is instanced works for me.
Okay. So cool features from EQ2 there. Now the next one I want to get into is probably one of the most advanced. I did not play it much. Hayah, you played it a little bit, as EVE Online.
I didn't play it enough to explore its guild features.
So I just want to go through some of these features. Again, these are just bullet points. There's probably more to it. Like I said, feel free to add in the comments. But so you had basically a corporation was a guild. But in game, you could form alliances which would group corporations. Now, I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that. I hope that's in Pantheon. We'll get into that more. They had their own friends and enemy list. So you could literally pick other guilds to friend or enemy. So not only could you had a guild, you had a hard alliance, like you signed a contract with them and you worked together, but then you had friend guilds. Like, okay, I like these guilds. I'm not aligned with them, but
they're okay.
And I really hate these guys.
Right? Screw those dudes.
Now, the interesting part is the interface of the guild had voting systems based on decisions with like stocks that people had. You could have wars between corporations and alliances. So you could just fight that group you don't like, or you could take an entire corporation against another corporation. Again, really cool. Extensive permission systems. So tons of permission systems. So many different things you could do. And it lists here like, financial officer, CEO, like, and there were all these different things that you were capable of doing in these roles. Extensive banking system, which, is pretty common. You could trade and craft on behalf of the corporation, which is interesting. I don't know a lot about it, so I'm just going to say that when I hear that, what would be cool if Pantheon had you could craft right to the guild bank, or you could craft with mats from the guild bank if you had the right profession, which would be cool. So you don't have to even
I don't know if you plan on covering this later, but do you remember Blade and Soul's guild crafting system?
I'm going to be honest with you, I actually do not.
Okay, so let me touch on this before we move on to another topic after. Okay, so Blade and Soul's crafting system. I can't believe you don't remember it, but
I probably will.
You could craft a guild outfit. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
So what we would do with we had a really small guild.
But we were still one of the first ones with one of the coolest, like, hardest to get outfits.
So we had like maybe 6 to 8, mainstay rock steady people. But what we would do is we would get together and we would go to this guild outfit NPC in the game, and we would like instance ourselves to look at someone who was crafting an outfit for us. And then once we had picked a design we all liked, we would lock it in, and then we would need different professions from different players in order to be allowed to start the craft on it.
And you could donate them in. Like, you could donate
and any guild bank donations were done in a way that you would never get them back on an individual basis. So the guild leader couldn't cash out his guild bank.
Yeah.
It went to the guild and it was there, or it was not, or it was gone.
I forgot how cool that was.
You needed, one of every profession involved in each of the materials you needed for that specific outfit. And there were special drops from certain raid bosses and special drops from certain events for small little flares on the outfit and stuff. But that was one of the coolest guild systems I've ever experienced.
At least for that aspect of it.
Because there was like we all need to agree on a look, and then we all need to agree that we're all going to try and help out to get the materials for that look.
You know what's funny? I found a screenshot. Maybe I'll post it. If you guys see it on the video, it'll be after edit. I'll post it up top. But we have a video of when we did a boss kill all in our new outfit.
Yeah,
which is
yes.
And I have it.
That's
so
cool.
I'll have to fire that in here. So yeah, just to kind of touch on what Hayah was talking about for those that didn't play, the one thing is like the creation of your outfit. You had to pick all the pieces of it. You know, the arms, the shoulders, the headgear, the body type, and it would go over top of your armor, so it was like a visual thing, so it wasn't just a tabard or a cloak. And what would happen is everybody could talk, like he said, to an NPC, and it would take you into like a character creation screen, your own, and you could
bring your friends with you too to see what
they can
you
watch
were
you
making.
building. Yeah, they can watch you building, and then basically what would happen is all these people built these models, and then we voted as a guild and said we like that one. And then once we had it, you had like this task list of all the different things you needed, and you just kept farming it, whether it was dungeons or whether it was world or crafted. You just kept doing all this stuff to keep putting it into there, and then one day you unlocked it, it was built, and then anybody could go grab it. It was awesome. Awesome. Wow, I forgot about that, and that
was a very cool system.
Yeah.
For what that game was and what it turned out to be, they really had that down pat. That was a really cool inclusive guild system.
And like once you got that out, especially with how hard ours was, you know, there were easy ones to make.
Well, we went all out, right? We're like fashionistas, and let's do this with the gold flare and we were intense on it.
It was like, do you want to use this?
But we
thread?
did it.
We did it, and that was an epic day. That was an epic day.
It really was. I
think at first some of the pieces weren't even out yet.
We had to wait until certain dungeons unlocked. Because remember, we had one. I'm going to get oddly specific and go off track here, but we had one that had like a face mask, a thing, and then the second iteration of it was the goggles with a mustache there. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I remember the name of that outfit when we saved it. Like the template was called Fancy McPants. I remember it like it was yesterday.
And that's the kind of stuff that, that's the kind of stuff that makes skills awesome. It's like you remember that. I don't remember just because I don't remember anything.
Dumb things.
Like my memory is so horrible. You would think that I did tons of drugs and I didn't, and I should have, because there's really none of the side effects would have affected me because I'm the same. So except I probably would have lost weight. So we were talking a little bit. I just want to get back to Eve, and that was an awesome bring up on Bleeding Soul, especially because I forgot about that. So for people who haven't heard of that, that's a pretty cool story. So you had forums for each corporation, which is kind of neat. Calendars, obviously, corporate mailing lists built into the game. That's super cool. There were some add-ons in WoW that could do mailing lists, and they always got broken because people were spamming with them and such. And then you obviously have like a corporate logo and all that kind of stuff. So Eve had a lot of stuff there. There was a taxing system for employees running missions that would add to the bank. I like that. I like that a lot.
Because you weren't a member of the guild, you were an employee of the corporation, right?
Which is really cool. And you could tie that into a medieval MMO easy,
Absolutely.
like just a mercenary, right? Okay, so we've kind of covered some different styles. I love that you brought up the Bleeding Soul. So let's talk a little bit about Pantheon. Please, guys, know this and understand that we're hypothesizing on what would be cool. I apologize that we don't have more solid information. I sent out some tweets at one point, and I got some likes from like Brad, and this isn't a big deal, but like, so they're looking and listening still, and that's not just because of me. Like, you guys, if you have good ideas for guilds, tweet him at him. He responds and he sees that stuff. They're always lurking. The one thing I'll tell you guys, you may think that we're not getting enough information, but they are watching and listening to everything. It's kind of crazy. So let's talk about Pantheon. So here's what I want. I want a guild that rewards you for your longevity in the guild.
Yes, agree.
I want an in-guild automated tenure system that rewards you points, which you could use those points to promote. You know, you could say if you have this many points, and those points can be awarded from crafting from the guild, raiding with the guild events, like whatever it is. But I want it automated. The problem is when you get to a point system, and I'm going to give a shout out to Sparks Interface. He put out about a reputation server on Reddit, and one of the things he said is having an allotment of kudos points, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So he said it was just there was 1 million points. It's a pretty cool post. Read it. It's an interesting idea. But there was a thing he said about kudos points where you could give another player kudos points and you couldn't reward a player for X amount of days. So you couldn't just give it all to your friends. And spending those kudos points, if somebody got kudos, it helped their reputation. It got them extra benefits. So it was really helpful to be a positive person in a group and try to get those kudos points. And I kind of took that a different step and said, wow, what if you could do that in a guild? What if you had the same type of roles? You couldn't give it to the same people, but those kudos points could be spent on different guild rewards. Having that list of things you can get because you're in that guild. Here's your tenure level. So you have different things at different tenure levels, which they could continue to add, right? Not a problem, because if everybody starts from day one, they could have a 30-day tenure. And that could be preloaded. They could preload a 60-day tenure. They could, 1 year tenure. But having tenure, I would love to see important in a guild. I know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. Because not in a game where that isn't a built-in feature, that's up to officers and leadership then to control that kind of, what are we going to do this because this guy's been here forever, that kind of stuff. It's nice to have it taken out of the hands. It makes it a little one step down on the tedium scale of managing a guild, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where WoW really suffered, is that they didn't. Running a guild is tedious, and if and you said it perfectly. I mean, there's never going to be an automated system in a game that can allow us to handle drama.
No.
So that's where most of our time is going to be spent. So-and-so did this, so-and-so did that. I'm upset with where we're at in the guild. I want to be more hardcore. I want to be less hardcore. I can't make raids, but I want to be in the... I mean, there's a million things that we could talk about. But being able to reward people with in-game tenure, attendance, like all that stuff should be able to be managed in-game without a guild leader having to go and click it. And I think that would be a huge deal for me. It would help. We need reasons, not just the people in it, but we need reasons for people to join a guild, work through problems. Yeah, work through problems, meet people. Again, there's people in the guild that I've not liked in the beginning. And, in the end I did because I stuck in. But there's a lot of people who don't have that patience. So what can we give those people to say, I'm going to stick this out because this is worth it to me? I'd even be as crazy to say that you get stat boosts for being certain tenure level in a guild, and when you leave, they're gone.
Yeah,
and I know
it could be a thing.
And I know a lot of people would say, "Well, that's not fair." Blah blah blah. What if you just start? You're going to be behind. Yeah, you are. I mean, it doesn't have to be so significant that everybody who has tenure in a guild is going to destroy you. But something that would make your character stronger because you've been a great representative of a guild.
Yep. And you can even throw like RP logic behind it, where like if you've been in a guild for a long time, you have a higher constitution stat because you're more confident. Yep. Boom. There's your RP logic reasoning.
Yep. And so that's the kind of thing that I think I would want most in a guild. What would you, I mean, whether it's something we've talked about or something off the top of your head, like what's most important to you to have in a guild?
For me, on a personal level, guild mechanics as far as a game-based UI feature have always been secondary. Even me and you have made do with crappy mechanical UI element guild features and achieved and gone above and beyond with it. So I still think a guild is just a good group of people to play a video game with. As far as the guild stuff goes, I think I'm going to make do with what's given. And I'm going to try and use it to its fullest and go above and beyond on a personal level, rather than relying on a guild mechanic video.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I want the tenure thing. That's probably my biggest push. And then looking at other games, you need a shared bank. Allow that shared bank to have some crafting functionality. Guild-based crafting should be a thing.
I think that's a cool thing. Yeah, I agree.
I think that I don't want multiple guilds, but I think in-game actual alliance of guilds is very cool. Where you sign that peace treaty and it maybe even has a date time limit. Like,
and you have to renew or cancel after a certain point. Yeah.
Yeah, you go to a guild hall, you buy different contracts, and they're more expensive as they're longer, and you sit down with another guild, and 2 leaders sign it, and boom, you're aligned. And, you could have some pretty cool features to that, too. Whether it forms like an alliance channel now, you can talk to both guilds, say, hey, we're down a person. Does anyone in the guild want to come with us? Or maybe, again, you tie crafting into it. I think that to make crafting even stronger, which is something we'll talk about another time, but to make crafting even stronger, interfacing it into the guild and having an importance with that would be really cool.
Yeah.
So, But those are kind of the only things. I mean, you're gonna have things like I said, like a joint bank. You're gonna have. I do want some kind of logo system. I'd like you to be able to put logos on gear, whether it's like
So
on a
you're talking
shoulder
like
pad.
tabard or cloak or standard even that you can carry maybe.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be everything. I think it would be
Yeah.
cool to put it on the shoulders. I think it'd be cool to put it on the cloak. I would
Mhm.
love to put it on a shield. So if you're like to
Yes.
have it right on the front of your shield would be
Yep. Yep.
super cool. And that's stuff that should be easy, just to put a skin right over top of something. So,
So let me nerd out for a second and imagine that you're playing a warrior and you're dropping one of your banner abilities, right? Your standards, and it's got your guild logo on it, and it's
super
part
cool.
of the combat environment. That's just so cool to me.
Yeah.
Like, let me have this, please.
Yeah, without a doubt. So we've talked a little bit about some of the things that are in guilds. We've shared some stories about things that we've done in guilds that we really liked. End of the day, what it comes down to is this. I think a lot of the Pantheon community is going to say, guys, yeah, we love guilds. Who could not want to be in a guild? But
Hmm.
there are a lot of those people out there that kind of want to solo, right? That don't want to commit to a guild. Maybe they'll find a group that they jump into, but they don't want to commit. What are your guys' thoughts specifically? Those that don't want to be in a guild, would these things entice you to be in a guild? If you're a raid leader out there, what do you think? If you're, I'm sorry, a raid leader or a guild leader, like these things, would they make your life easier? Because it's not easy. It's not an easy job. There was a phenomenal post. I wish I would have saved it forever ago on Reddit that said like the frustrations of a raid leader for WoW, and it was just raid leaders and guild leaders just talking nonstop about things that drive them crazy. And it was hilarious.
Hugging it out, support system style. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was hilarious because if you were a raid leader, you knew all of those things. Like you're like, yep, I remember this guy specifically. Like, so it was interesting. But I think anything to help the culture of running guilds, because it's not easy. It's time consuming. It's like a job sometimes. Help raid leaders, help guild leaders out. And maybe it's not raid leaders in this game, planners, guild planners, because
Yep.
raiding's not going to be as big. So not as much as a focus, let's say.
Call them event coordinators if you have to, but
Yeah,
remove some of the more tedious, stupid base level stuff so that they can focus elsewhere and have their targets on the right things.
and I'll tell you this right now: if VR does put out an extensive revolutionary guild system, it may be is equally important to anything else they do, and it can be something you can sell
Completely
the game
agree.
on. You can sell
Yep.
the game on it. I
Yep.
mean, is the same thing as they say that there's every class is going to have an identity. Super important. That
Mhm.
guild system just as important. It can be the selling point for the game that really says to people, "Oh man, that would be really cool to have in this game. I want to try that." If anything, at the end of the day, we've talked about social and we've talked about community, and that to me ties in huge to that.
It's key. It's pillar level of a community is having smaller communities within a bigger community.
Exactly.
You know,
So, anything you have to say before we wrap it up?
no, I'm fairly confident we covered most things.
Yeah, and there's tons more games that we haven't covered. So if there's games that you've played that you liked aspects of their guild system, throw it in the comments. We'll put this on Reddit. We'll have our comments on YouTube. Either one, we read both. We tweet out both our YouTube channel and the Reddit feed so people can comment on there. We do want to support that community with our followers. So, yeah, I mean, this to me this is a game breaker. This is so important. I think it's sort of on the back burner for a lot of people, but they don't realize, yeah, that would be amazing. So let's get an awesome guild system VR. Brad, I'm tweeting this video at you. I don't do much of that. I think I've tweeted at you once or twice as a joke from someone else's post. I'm tweeting this one at you, Brad. I don't know if you ever watch it, but please put time, just like you do in the classes, into the guild system because it will be a massive importance to community. So everybody, thank you. You guys can see in our new little cool splash that we have here. We have our Twitter up top, the website, obviously, Pantheon.plus, and our YouTube channel. So check us out. If you haven't subscribed and you like us, please do. If you don't like us, let us know how we can get your sub and how we can improve our own methods. Right? I guess.
Yeah. How do we connect with you?
Yeah, and what you guys are going to see, we're trying to get more personality so you guys know us a little bit. You'll see our songs up top above our names. These are the songs we listen to before we go on air. We try to get ourselves hyped up. That includes usually some sort of drinking multiple times and then some music. And then we're like, let's go. There you go. Bud Light lime glass. That's pretty cool. I drank all my rum chata before, and now I'm drinking beer. So, everybody, let us know what you think. Yeah, another awesome time hanging out, shooting the shit, and recording.
As always.
Yeah. Everybody, thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Take care.
Pantheon.